A fire in a small village house. Or so we thought. That night, in the quiet mountain villages of the Black Sea, an elderly couple was trapped as their home went up in flames. At first glance, it seemed like an accident. But a single detail revealed the truth. Melted plastic was found on their wrists. This fire had not started by itself. And that tiny clue would expose one of Turkey's most merciless serial killers. Mehmet Ali Çayıroğlu. On the outside, an ordinary butcher. On the inside, a calculating killer. He chose his victims carefully, usually elderly people living alone in remote parts of the village where no one could come to help. He visited villages under the pretense of buying and selling animals, earning their trust. But at night, a completely different face appeared. He dressed in camouflage, played fake radio chatter to sound like a soldier, and knocked on doors. People thought he was an officer, obeyed without resistance. Then he set fires, turned on the gas, or sometimes used a gun. Every method was different, but all served one purpose: to make death look like an accident. And afterward came the looting: livestock, weapons, cash. The victim's belongings would soon turn up on his farm or nearby. Murder had become a business for him, but no matter how carefully he planned, he couldn't escape leaving a trace. CCTV footage, images on his phone, stolen belongings. When the small pieces were put together, the bigger picture became clear. This was a cold, calculated chain of crimes. And now, we'll go back, night by night, to see how that plan was carried out. February 2018. In the village of Ozyurt, Terme District, Ordu. A cold winter night. 80-year-old Sevim Semes was sleeping at home with her daughters. That night would be remembered by the villagers as a tragic accident. As the night went on, everyone was asleep. No one noticed the flames approaching. By morning, the house was nothing but ashes. When neighbors rushed to help, the devastation was complete. Sevim and her daughters had perished. At first, everyone thought it was a stove or chimney accident. The whole village went into mourning. But one thing stood out: the cattle from the barn were missing. Villagers assumed they had run away from the fire, but this would turn out to be the first sign that this was no ordinary accident. Just 2 weeks after the first fire, this time in a small village in Unye, Nuri and Lutfiye Usluoğlu, the village's most beloved elderly couple. Their doors were always open and guests were always welcome. Nuri had a special passion: hunting rifles. He would collect them and proudly show them off to his friends. Everyone knew they had a few rare and valuable weapons in their home. That night, everything seemed normal. The couple sat by the stove, then went to bed. But around midnight, smoke began filling the rooms. While they slept, the fire spread. By morning, the village was shaken by a second deadly fire. When neighbors came to help, the sight was horrifying. The couple had died in their home. Once again, everyone blamed the stove, but the closeness of the village revealed another detail. The shotguns Nuri proudly displayed were gone. Neighbors had held them in their hands many times. Now, nothing was left. First the missing animals, now the missing guns. In a village, everyone knows what's inside each other's homes. Those guns were there, and now they weren't. Was this still coincidence? Or was someone targeting the most vulnerable? May 2018. In the rural district of Akuş, Shaker Kosiolu went out early to check on her animals, a hard-working woman living alone. By noon that day, she had vanished. At first, neighbors thought it was strange. Shaker never stayed away this long. By evening, the whole village searched. Maybe she's by the stream, maybe at a neighbor's, they said. But there was no trace. A week later, a body was found in a distant stream bed. It could have been seen as a natural death. But forensic analysis revealed it was no accident. The autopsy revealed she had been shot, a bullet to the neck. The entire village was in shock. Her disappearance was now an official murder case. Even more alarming, her calf was missing. This was no random tragedy. People started connecting this to the other strange events, 3 tragedies in a row. Missing animals, missing valuables, now a missing calf. The villagers were uneasy. The pieces were beginning to fit together. These clues pushed the investigation in a new direction. It was no longer bad luck. It was a pattern. After the fires, Mehmet chose a quieter method. This time, he killed with an invisible gas. In village homes, there's no natural gas line. People use gas heaters with small tanks. If left unchecked, they can be deadly. Mehmet knew this and used it. He loosened the valve and let the gas silently fill the room. Inside, they were sleeping. The gas had no smell, no color. Within minutes, their breathing slowed. They never woke up. In the morning, neighbors knocked. No answer. Inside, they found the lifeless bodies. Everyone said the same thing. The heater must have leaked, and no one questioned it further. But the gendarmerie found something strange. Villagers said the woman had gold bracelets and coins, but in the search, none were found. Once again, death looked like an accident, but the emptiness told a different story. After the gas murder, Mehmet realized there was still a trail. In his mind, only fire left no evidence, because fire burns everything. And soon after, another fire broke out. He locked the door from the inside. Even if they saw the flames, they couldn't escape. By morning, the house was gone. Inside, another elderly couple had burned to death. But there were inconsistencies. The door was locked from inside. Several animals were missing. And once again, the valuables were gone. This was no longer coincidence. Villagers asked the same question. Are we being targeted? Fear spread through the village. The murders didn't stop. But this time, Mehmet made a mistake. This time, he left something behind. They noticed the victims' hands looked tied behind their backs. And just below the wrists was the melted remnant of a plastic zip tie. This changed everything. The gendarmerie stopped treating it as an accident. They searched the entire area. Several unburnt zip ties were found near the house. They were collected and sent to the lab. The lab compared them with the melted one. Result: identical type, identical batch. This was the strongest proof yet. These were no accidents. All the evidence, fires, poisonings, disappearances was connected. And what gave him away was a single piece of melted plastic. Sometimes, hundreds of pages of files and dozens of witnesses can't do what a single small clue can. What brought Mehmet down was that tiny zip tie. After the lab results, investigators reviewed every camera recording. CCTV, farm cameras, city surveillance. Night after night, they saw the same vehicle. They also tracked livestock sales, local trade records. Some buyers remembered suspicious transactions. All signs pointed back to Mehmet. Key witnesses were re-interviewed. Descriptions of a night truck matched vehicle data. Piece by piece, his routine was mapped. They traced the batch of zip ties to a local supplier. Receipts and invoices closed the last gap in the chain. All evidence was presented to the court. The prosecutor charged Mehmet Ali Çayıroğlu with 13 murders. Throughout the hearings, Mehmet stayed calm, never blinked, as if listening to someone else's story. Finally, the verdict came. Life imprisonment without parole. The man who haunted this village for years was finally stopped. But the burned houses, the lost lives, will never be forgotten. Mehmet's story shows us this. Sometimes the smallest clue can reveal the darkest crimes. Do you think Mehmet could have been stopped after the first murder? Or was this nightmare inevitable? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more dark cases like this one.